Good day, everyone. Today, we, Group 6, are going to discuss about fermentation in the dairy industry. And I would first like to give a background on what is fermented dairy products. Fermented dairy products have been an important component of nutrition and diet ever since the olden days. And from a biological standpoint, fermented milk is characterized by the accumulation of a microbial metabolic products in milk. Fermented dairy products have remained a staple in human society due to their taste, nutrition, and health benefits, and its ability to preserve food for long periods of time. Examples of fermented dairy products are cheese, yogurt, sour cream, and many more. So to start off this discussion, I would like to ask, what is the application of fermented dairy products?
Thank you, Q. So let me answer the question for the applications of fermented dairy products. The first one is high in nutrition, because fermented dairy products are naturally high in protein, vitamins, minerals, and also contain probiotics, which makes them a functional food. So the second one is beneficial to health. Fermented dairy products contain beneficial microbes that can support the gut microbiome, which aids in digestion. Furthermore, these microbes also have antimicrobial properties, which can prevent the effects of pathogenic microbes. And the third one is food preservation. Dairy products which are fermented will extend the shelf life of the product to allow it to be stored for long periods of time as food storage. And lastly, soft intolerance. Fermented dairy products allow people with lactose intolerance to consume dairy products, as the lactose is broken down during the fermentation process.
Thank you so much, Danish. Diva, maybe you can explain further on how these applications provide advantages to the people, profit, and the planet.
Consuming fermented milk products, particularly yogurt, is strongly associated with various measures of weight control, including less obesity, lower body weight, reduced body fat, and reduced weight gain over time. Not only does it enhance food preservation, but eating fermented foods can also boost the number of beneficial bacteria or probiotics in your gut. This makes fermented dairy products an essential part of every individual's daily diet, thereby increasing the demand for fermented dairy products. Changes in lifestyle and the desire to eat healthy has led to an increases in demand for fermented dairy products. Fermented dairy products not having lactose also opens a new market to obtain more profits from lactose intolerant consumers. Fermented food are also good for the environment by making use of available local produce. Minimal additional agricultural input is needed in resource-poor regions. Fermentation uses little energy compared with food processing methods such as canning and freeze drying. Thank you.
You can see that fermented dairy products have quite a lot of applications, but what is the mechanism behind it? So let's ask Tian Hui for what are the microorganisms involved.
Okay, based on the studies from Xian D. Hickey, Jeremiah J. Sheehan, Martin Jewick, Wilkinson, and Mark A. E. Otti, the microorganisms involved in the fermentation of dairy products are Streptococcus, Lactococcus, Lactobacilli, Bifidobacteria, Enterococcus, and Pediococcus species.
I see. That's very interesting. Can you tell me more about its raw materials and the medium composition used?
Sure. The raw material used for the fermentation of dairy products are milk and bacteria. In order to provide an optimal medium for the growth of bacteria, various nitrogen sources are provided, such as peptone, yeast extract, beef extract, or whey protein. Besides that, minerals such as manganese and magnesium ion are the composition that can be found in the cultivation medium of lab, which is lactic acid bacteria. Buffering agents such as sodium acetate and disodium glycerol phosphate are also essential composition in the medium too. Furthermore, simple carbohydrates and sugars act as the primary sources of energy and carbon for the bacterial growth.
So now we have learned about the raw materials and the composition used in the fermentation of dairy products. So now let's call up AFZA to explain more about the biochemical pathway involved.
So I will explain about biochemical pathway. Traditionally, fermented dairy products have been considered to be the best probiotic carrier because they are easy to produce. The dairy product, including milk, yogurt, and cheese, have been utilized for probiotification, and consumers are aware of the presence of the microorganisms that involved in the dairy product that they consume. Example biochemical pathway is cellular respiration. As we know, they have two types of cellular respiration, which is aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. So I want to highlight here only anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration is the way cells use the energy when the oxygen does not occur. Yogurt and cheese are the example of the dairy product that have anaerobic respiration. As we know, fermentation is the process that uses anaerobic respiration to change the chemical of food. There are two types of anaerobic respiration, which is alcoholic fermentation and lactic acid fermentation. Alcoholic fermentation turns pyruvate into the ethanol and carbon dioxide, while lactic acid fermentation produces lactic acid from the pyruvate.
Thank you, AFZA. So we've talked about the biochemical pathways involved. What about the process conditions?
Okay, so I will explain the addition. The process condition I want to explain. They have two, which is additional enzyme and additive, chemical additive. So I will explain about additional enzyme that usually add in the dairy product first. First enzyme is the protease. Protease are the enzyme that break down the protein. So the main protease in the milk is the plasmin. Okay, so the protease are inactivated by heat, while other are not. Degradation of the protein can be undesirable, leading to the bitter of the flavor or giving the cheese a desirable texture during the aging. So other than that, proteins are important in cheese production because they can release casein, which is to stabilize the formation and prevent the coagulation. So next enzyme is lactase. Lactase is a hydrolysis enzyme that breaks down the lactose into the constituent sugar, which is galactose and glucose. Galactose and glucose is the two smaller sugar that can be absorbed into the bloodstream. So processed food such as milk product or yogurt may also contain the small amount of the lactose. The next enzyme is catalyst. Catalyst is the enzyme have found the limited use in cheese production. Hydrogen peroxide is a potent oxidizer and toxic to the cell. So in the production of certain cheese such as Swiss cheese, it's used in place of the pasteurization that is beneficial to the product and flavor development of the cheese. So last but not least is lipase. Lipase is enzyme that used to break down milk fat and give cheese the characteristic flavor. For example, the Italian cheese and Romano cheese have the stronger flavor that is prepared by using the lipase. So the flavor actually comes from the free fatty acid itself, and it produced when milk fats are hydrolyzed. So I will continue with the chemical additive that involved in the dairy product. So there are four that I found, which is natamycin. Natamycin is used in a variety of the dairy application. In particular, natamycin is often used in the product such as cream cheese, cottage cheese, sour cream, yogurt, and more. It's used in order to prevent mold and fungus growth in the food. So this is one of the reasons. Other than that, this is one of the reasons for food producer to use natamycin is to replace the artificial preservative sorbic acid. So next chemical additive is acesulfame potassium. Acesulfame potassium is used in low calorie product and dairy product. It is especially suitable for the diabetic because it's free of the calories. So acesulfame potassium is good for stability and as a sweetener for the dairy product. So next is tricalcium phosphate. Tricalcium phosphate prevent powdered food from cracking, lumping, and aggregation and improve the fluidity. Other than that, tricalcium phosphate also increase the level of the calcium in the dairy product. last but not least is polysorbate 80, which is role of polysorbate 80 is to distribute artificial sweetener and flavor throughout the gelatin-like substance. Polysorbate 80 is a deforming agent that used in the production of some cottage cheese. So I think that's all. So I will pass back to Q.
Maybe now we can talk about the downstream processes. P3.
Thank you, Q. So for the downstream process that involve for the fermentation, there are two processes that will be considered. The first one is purification and the second one is extraction. So I will be now to explain the purification. Pasteurizing milk destroys up to until 99.9% approximately to 100% of disease due to microorganisms. And also by going with this process, it will extend the shelf life to 16 until 21 days from the time since it was packaged. So the next one is extraction process. To extract dairy milk, we use a mixture of diethyl ether and pentane to quicken the process. This method is integrated by using the specific mixture of hexane, which consists of isopropanol function group. This method is applicable and well proposed by Hara and Radin since 1978. The extracted milk that can be used to produce fermented dairy products. So I think that's all for downstream process.
What would you say is the challenges faced throughout the production of the process?
The challenges faced throughout the production of the process. So I will be first to explain the purity of products. Poor insulation and filtration technique during the fermentation process of dairy product may cause the product to contain impurities or byproducts that will affect the content and flavor of the final product. Example of byproduct are skim milk, buttermilk, and whey. The second one is enzyme limiting factor. So you know that the low concentration of enzyme will decrease productivity of the fermentation process. Besides that, an unsuitable pH level or very high temperature will cause the enzyme in the fermentation process to become denatured, which inhibit the fermentation process. Meanwhile, too low temperature will decrease the productivity of the enzyme and decrease the yield. The third is about the raw material quality. The quality of meat depends on the genetic composition of the cow, the health of the cow, and the amount of the nutrition the cow receives. If the cow species is not suited for milk production, unhealthy, or does not have enough nutrition, the quality of meat produced is low, which will affect the quality of the final product. And the last one is about the challenges is microbial contamination. The presence of undesirable competitive microorganisms during fermentation process due to unsterile environment or leakage will cause partial or complete loss of production. So I think that's all for the challenges.
All right. Lastly, let's have Danish talk about what are the suggestions to improve the quality of fermented dairy products.
All right, thank you, Q. So for the suggestions to improve the quality of fermented dairy products, I will explain it in two parts, which the first part is raw material. So for raw material, the quality of fermented dairy products can be improved by maintaining proper nutrition for the cow. This will ensure that the cattle will produce sufficient and high quality milk. Next, good hygiene practices should be applied throughout the dairy chain to ensure that the cows do not fall sick. Being cautious when the weather turns hot and humid, as this weather condition causes the cow to eat less, and this in turn causes the fat content in milk to decrease. Finally, financial incentives should be prioritized to further improve the quality of dairy product. So the second part is the suggestions for fermentation process. To improve the fermentation process, an optimal pH and temperature should be maintained in the process chamber to maximize the productivity of the enzymes in the fermentation process. The amount of enzymes used in the production process should be increased as well to increase yield and productivity of the fermented dairy product. Proper insulation and filtration technique of the products during the process should be employed to ensure the quality and purity of the product. The boundaries of the process tanks should be regularly checked to undergo maintenance to ensure there is a sterile production environment to prevent microbial contamination. Okay, thank you.